Today's video, we're going to talk about leads not converting from paid ads or any other traffic source where you're driving traffic to your website. It's all the same thing, or even if you're generating leads offline. This all applies to you as well. These are the three things that you need to have to make sure that you're not leaving at least 3/4 of your money that you could be making with your leads on the table and making the mistake a lot of people make, which is just blame the advertising when you're not getting enough sales from your advertising. I mean, you could easily getting 3-4 times the sales you're getting right now if you just understood the key things that you need to know about pairing a paid campaign where you're driving paid traffic to your site with the sales process to make the money that you're going to make. And half of it's down to the sales process, and that is what you make, and half of it is really with the ads. But the tendency is to blame the ads 100% and not look at the sales process at all. And that in itself is the opportunity here. And I promise you, and yes, I do mean you as well, that you are not doing all of this stuff. I guarantee it. Which means if you stay to the end of the video, you're going to have what it takes to make more money from the same leads you have now. And it's all just free extra profit for you at the end of the day. Also, at the end of the video, I will talk about a case study proving this for a window installer where we've used this system, if you will, and these key three things I'm going to cover here in the video to make a lot more money, more than double the amount of money from the same amount of leads we had once it was put in place for this particular window installer. So with that said, I'll get into the content, but before I do, if you do not know who I am Corey Zyman, owner of Guaranteed PPC, an online advertising agency that specializes in guaranteeing results for their clients, not charge our clients management fees until we can get them a certain minimum lift in their profitability, basically in excess of the management fees that we charge. We are the only agency out there doing anything like this, which should tell you something about the quality of the information you're receiving on today's video. So with that said, getting into the content. So the main culprits of, if you will, why your leads do not convert when you're running an ad campaign and you have traffic coming in are as follows. I'm going to cover these one by one and in detail. Starting with number one on my list, which is traffic source is money. So as I mentioned, half of what you're going to make with ads, driving ad traffic to your site, comes from the ad strategy and half is the sales process. That said, if you're bad enough on the ad itself, you'll never close any leads because the leads are just not closable. But that is the tendency of people to think that is the default. It is sometimes, it isn't, and there's an easy way to tell. But with that said, if you have the ad campaigns driving traffic to your site, they're not closing, what you want to look at least first is that your ads are not having a bunch of click fraud or bots. Because even when you're running Google search ads, you got competitors using software clicking your ads. The software will go to your site, fill out a form, pretend it's a real user to trick you, trick Google, and then they drain your budget this way. Or if you're running an ad on YouTube or another website on the internet, it's the same thing. But in this particular case, people are trying to make money from their own advertising on their websites, partnering with Google. They'll click their own ads, drain your money as a way to just get money for nothing. Even big websites are doing this, like Forbes.com. And for that matter, it's actually better advertising with small players than big players, because the big guys are almost all doing it now, the legacy media outlets and so forth, because they're failing as an organization. With all that said, you got to be able to identify how to pinpoint traffic that is bot traffic / click fraud traffic versus not, so you can actually block it. Most people don't even know it's happening to them, but when you do, you got to know how to block it. And for that matter, click fraud software like Clixies, generally speaking, isn't going to do anything if you, in 80-90% of the situations where you have an issue with click fraud going on, if you will. There's also issues with bots that are just clicking through itself, but generally speaking, when you have poor quality leads because of click fraud and or bots, it's because people are clicking their own ads to make money for nothing from Google AdSense, or they're trying to drive your budget down to zero so that they can run their ads exclusively without you being next to them anymore. So you have to check that first, because honestly, with ads nowadays, with the amount of click fraud, the amount of bots out there, this is the most common reason why you're not closing any leads. Assuming that you didn't have any leads that are converting yet. You're just starting up your ads. But even when you have been advertising for a while and they were closing, you could get a rash of click fraud out of nowhere, and it'll drive your closing rate on your leads almost down to zero as well. I don't have time to go into all the details with click fraud on this video. I've got other videos about that you could search for on my channel homepage. Bottom line, you got to be able to sniff it out. From there, once you've taken care of that potential reason for leads that won't convert, you're going to look at competitor traffic. This is a big one nowadays with search campaigns on Google. If you're running them specifically, what people will do is accidentally have their ad show up for people who are typing in the competitor's name. They type in your competitor's name on Google. They see your ad pop up. They don't read your ad half the time. Half the people don't read the ad before clicking on it. They just assume whatever ads show up, Google knows what they want, and they're just going to click on it without reading. They're going to go to your site. They're not going to read anything on your site because they're going to assume Google sent them to the right place without having to think, because they don't want to think. They're going to call. That call led to nothing because, they ultimately eventually figured out that you're not the competitor, and then they just hung up the phone. And so that's another reason why your lead quality can be bad enough to where your leads are not converting, so to say. You also got info traffic or accidental clicks. So what also, going back to search campaigns here again, what you can often have is people typing in, like if you're a plumber, to give you a basic example, they type in how to fix a broken toilet. Your ad pops up when really it should be showing up for people typing in broken toilet repairman, plumbing services like that. And again, like I mentioned before, people don't read ads half the time when they're showing up, which if you're going to make money with ads, you got to have your ad show up for people that you want to click, not people that you're expecting to read the ad, decide if it's for them, and then click. Because you're going to get so much waste from people that are not reading the ad that it's not going to make money at the end of the day. But people type in a DIY question like that. How do I get rid of a toilet clogged with crap? We'll just say that is the search. And they didn't read the ad. They click through. They get to the site. They realize that there's no unclogging tips there. And then they go back to Google to click on something else. So they accidentally clicked on your ad thinking that you'd be able to help them, which, you got to be able to fix this in your ads. And usually this involves using, instead of broad match keywords, you use exact match keywords. You also use, in combination with exact match keywords, negative keywords to be able to clean up the ad showing up in places where there's no opportunity to get somebody on the hook that is worth anything, that is closable. So that's the other main thing, that why your traffic could be screwing up your leads, the fact that your leads are not converting. The final reason, as it ties to the traffic itself, is the offer's not clear. So a lot of guys will run like banner ads, YouTube ads, and what you're advertising looks interesting and everything, but it doesn't communicate what you need to communicate properly. It may say, get rich, developing your sales pipeline. Let's say that's the headline on your ad. And this is a banner ad we're talking about. And what you really sell is you offer a CRM system. People click that ad, they get to your site, they realize it's a CRM system. There's a disconnect there, they don't actually convert. Even though your CRM might actually help the person do that, they have a preconceived notion of what they would want to do and what works. And then as a result of that, you're not going to get people to fill out the form. And then when they do fill out the form, because half the people don't read the page, they're not going to be, when you get them on the hook, they're not going to realize that it's for a CRM, and they're just not going to be interested right away. Ideally, when you're running ads, you want to say something outlandish as possible to get the maximum people to click through, if you will, but not to the point where you're doing clickbait. So you have to represent what it is that you're doing. So offering, let's say, muscle building supplements, you're going to say muscle building supplement gains 30 pounds of muscle overnight, not here's how to gain 30 pounds of muscle overnight. Even though that second ad could get a high click-through rate potentially, and you could maybe pull off bringing in and introducing your product itself once they get to the page, your landing page. Generally speaking, that's not the best policy to go that general route. In some cases, we will do that, if you will. Like in the teeth whitening space, we did this. We put on an ad, to give you a parallel example here, teeth whitening business in a box. We would have that ad, they would click on that ad and go to our site and basically We had a teeth whitening business certification program, and it wasn't technically, there was no physical box there with inside of it that you're going to pull out and start a teeth whitening business as is. You had to go through the certification program, then we'll send you the stuff. So indirectly it was, but not literally. So you don't have to be literal, but you can't be so far off base that when they get to the site, they're like, oh, this isn't what I expected. Because once you do that, because there will be a few people filling out the form still that are not checking out the page, reading it thoroughly. You can't expect everybody to self-qualify by reading the content on your page. The lead is not qualified as a result of that. And then you end up wasting your money and you're not going to have leads convert. Okay, so that's the other main reason why your traffic itself is causing your leads to be screwed up. So you got to fix all of those things even before you look at the sales process. Given that the sales process, people screw up on this more as a whole than even with the ads. And so going forward here, the second of the number two of the three things that you need to look at to fix why your leads are not converting is what I call speed to lead. And what this is how are you handling the leads when it comes in? How quickly are you getting back to the leads? And how specifically are you getting back to the leads? For a form lead, the ideal is that you're responding to form leads right away. You're using a program like CallDrip at calldrip.com. Immediately when a form fill is filled out, it calls your sales staff or call center that handles the calls. It says, Jeff Smith just filled out the form, press 1 to call John Smith. And it immediately calls the user. Why? Because that maximizes the amount of people that when you call them or follow up on that lead, that they're going to remember who you are. The longer it is, the more likely they forgot about who you are. And the more likely somebody got to them first, so by the time you get to them, they're less interested because they already had a long conversation with that competitor. And therefore, the lead quality is going to seem like it's worse, but really it was you just didn't respond fast enough. And that's why it seems your lead quality is messed up. When you're talking about phone calls itself, the lead quality can be poor because the phone rings too many times before you answer. You are having an IVR system instead of a human answer the phone, which will also affect your lead quality. You have a secretary answer, but she's not very pleasant on the phone. She doesn't start off the conversation stating who you are and why you're relevant. Hi, we're Jim's Plumbing, the number one plumbing company in the Tampa area with 27 years in business. How can I help you? Maybe also you do that, but they put you on hold to talk to the real salesperson, and you're on the hold. The person's on hold for over a minute, and that will affect your lead quality. Why? Because each thing that you do that I just mentioned will cut down on the amount of people that gets to the salesperson at the end of the day from each call that you're generating. All right? So that's something to consider. And then on top of that, so many companies don't have a backup plan. Like we had a fertility clinic that we worked with, and we would send a ton of leads and then consistently hear, like they're not making any money. And then I would tell them over and over again, hey, dude, you cannot run your business like you are now, where we're sending leads, and if your secretary is on the phone with somebody, nobody answers the lead, and you just eventually call them back. When somebody calls from a Google search ad or Bing search ad in particular, and you're in a competitive environment there, you can't have somebody call them back, because what the person's going to ultimately do is call the next person in line as soon as you don't answer the phone. And this would be more than half of the time, or they wouldn't be able to answer the phone call live. They would have they'd have the voicemail answer the call because they couldn't have a backup person answer the calls, which a lot of times you can't afford another salesperson. It's like a chicken and an egg thing. Well, I can't afford a salesperson because we don't have sales. Well, we don't have sales because we don't have a backup person answering the calls. Reality is you should be using a service like CallRail to do a call blast. So you can either do round robin, so if somebody doesn't answer, immediately gets forwarded to the backup person, or you can have it like a shotgun blast and it calls 3, 4, 5 people, and whoever answers it first gets it, which is the most ideal if you already have more than one person, more than one sales staff, because you can tell your sales staff that are paid on commission or partially paid on commission, whoever answers the phone quickest is going to make the most money, because it's going to go to whoever answers it first, and they're going to be waiting by the phone. That's the most ideal situation. But even if you don't have that, and the secretary is really the one answering the phone, which, is a mistake a lot of times as well, because they don't know how to build rapport with the user when they answer the phone. Even though you can get by with it in a lot of spaces still, you need to have a secondary person that can take the call. So if they're on lunch break, they were sick, they were on the phone with somebody, it immediately gets picked up by somebody else, and so you don't have any call drops as a result of that. And then the same thing with the forms, by the way, as well. If they can't answer the form within 5 minutes, which is the gold standard in 2025, somebody else is able to answer the phone anyway. And you've got a system where if they're out, the backup person immediately knows without even being told, because if the person gets hit by a bus, ideally the backup person's already on top of getting and handling the leads before anybody has to tell them. You got to set up redundant systems like this. So that's the second overall thing I would tell you in regards to speed to lead and how that affects lead quality, because people get frustrated with you the more slowly you respond to leads. Then when you go into the third thing you got to know about leads not converting, now you're getting into the sales orchestration process. So in other words, how you handle the sales process itself. And very few people that I deal with at our agency even have a refined sales process. I could go in as a prospective customer or client and inquire for the windows that they sell, or to be like a dermatology patient, doesn't matter. And each time I go through, the process is going to be different. There's no standardization of anything. Most people just assume sales involves hiring somebody with sales experience, sending them leads, and you're done. And if they're good salespeople, they'll close a lot, and if they aren't, they won't. Which I will admit, if you have a really good salesperson, you could give them no guidance and they're just going to sell like crazy anyway. But those people are super expensive. They're making 6 figures a year that require no guidance whatsoever, and they're also hard to get. Your business is typically not going to scale like that very easily, unless you're like in enterprise software or something like that, where you literally can afford to pay that consistently. Most other regular businesses got to be able to take a normal person that's making $50K a year answering the phone and turn them into a sales machine. And the way that you do that is you orchestrate the sales process so that all they have to do is follow a scripted process without the customer, this is key, knowing that it's a scripted process. Because as soon as they know that, they're going to think you're a salesperson, a sleazy salesperson, and they're not going to they're going to have their guard up, and it's going to be hard to get through to them at that point in time. So this is a very delicate process, but anybody can do this. So before I get into explaining this a little bit further here, I want you to know that as far as getting your ads in line the way that you're supposed to, so you don't have these issues, so that leads don't convert, you should subscribe to this channel, because I go over in detail how to fix click fraud issues, and so on and so on and so on. And it comes from somebody who spends legitimately 40 hours a week doing ad strategy at our firm to find this out. And I've been doing this for over a decade. I understand how this stuff works. And most of the information you're going to find on YouTube and elsewhere about how to manage ads that make money, it's coming to you by people giving you second and third hand information. I'm in the weeds 40 hours a week doing it, and I spend my weekends sharing what works and what doesn't work. So you're getting raw, real, straight from the source information on this channel. It's super rare, trust me on that. So you want to subscribe if you are serious about making money with ads. Furthermore, you should check out my blog while you're at it, if you like the channel. On my blog, I have the strategies we use to guarantee results for clients at our firm, mapped out step by step, given to you there. So if you like the channel, you're going to like that blog as well. If you have any questions, by the way, about anything I'm covering here, leave me a comment below. I get back to every single person who leaves me a question or comment on this channel, usually within 24 hours time. But going back to what I was saying here, so the third part of the thing that you have to check into as to why your leads are not converting, if they don't convert, understanding that a sales process that doesn't follow a process, it's not scripted, you're expecting a lot for your leads to convert when you just wing it. You can't. One day, if you don't script anything, one day you can have a closing rate of 15%, one day you can have a closing rate of 40%. And it's just based upon how that sales team you have or person you have handle the leads. Really, it's that simple. It makes that much of an impact. So what you got to do is come up with a process that you can test, that you put together, that the sales staff have to follow, otherwise they're fired, and that you could test step 3, step 4, step 5, split test it, and optimize and get to the most effective way to do it several years down the road after you've tested it every which way. And then you can expect your leads to convert consistently because you're not winging it anymore. All the big clients that I've worked with in the past that generated leads through their ad campaigns and scaled to many, many millions of dollars did not wing their sales process. They had a defined process that was repeatable every time, and they did it to the utmost level. They said certain things, they did certain things during the process, and it was all, they told their sales staff they had to do it this way, one, but two, they had processes in place where they had secret shoppers and to audit this. So every month or so, they'd have somebody come through and making sure the sales staff were following the process on top of it. Why? Because even if you tell staff you have to do this or you're going to get fired, they're still not going to do it. It might be a month, it might be 6 months before they stop doing it and get lazy because they think they're so smart, they know better than you. They're going to stop doing it. It's like, dealing with a teenager basically. So you're going to have to do this. You can't just assume they're going to keep doing it. I promise you they're not going to keep doing it. So then your job becomes figuring out strategic ways to improve the sales process that you can then test. And then if that test wins, implementing it into your sales process that your sales staff do so that you can make your sales process forever better and more consistent in terms of how many leads you have that will actually convert. For that matter, most of the people that I deal with that have poor lead closing rates know multiple stages of the lead, handling the lead. So generally speaking, you got to have a process for the phone handling. Then you got to have a process for the appointment. Then you got to have a process for what you do after the appointment. After the appointment, nobody does this, but I recommend it to everybody because it will generally double your closing rate. Sending them a physical FedEx package with a bunch of brochures, videos, swag, all of it. Why? Because your competition's not going to do it. When they're trying to decide between you and 2 or 3 other guys at a similar price point, they're just going to think you're the best because you did that one simple thing alone. And it shows you care. We call that shock and awe packages in the marketing space. We use them for our own firm. We'll spend $100 sending out a package to somebody that contacted us because it increases the closing rates astronomically. And then of course, beyond that, you have the follow-up process that nobody dictates. At our company, at least initially, we changed it recently because we're trying to do a lot of filtering of our clients that come to our agency to make sure we got serious people. But in other businesses that I'm part owners in or in other clients that I advise, I tell them, hey, the average amount of times on an actual form lead it typically takes to just get contact with them is 7 times. Now, if you're reaching out to people within 60 seconds, that's not going to be the case. It's going to be an average of a couple times. But it shows how much the follow-up game affects your closing rates on the leads that you have. Make as much money as you can from your leads. What you need to do is you need to tell your sales process or sales team, you're going to follow up a lead at least 15 times minimum before you give up on it. You're going to follow up, and then the next day you're going to follow up again. A couple days later, you're going to follow up again. A couple days later, you're going to follow up again. And they may not like it, but a lot of times that's what it takes to close a lead. Just trust me on this. And it should be, and if they actually get a proposal or quote, you should follow them up indefinitely until they say, no, I'm not interested, or it's been like 3 years or something. Why? Because people often get the quote, they don't go with anybody right now, because something came up, got busy, and they would have bought your window package if you would have just followed up with them 6 months from now. Versus just assuming that if they don't respond to you after a couple emails, they're not interested, which many times is absolutely not the case. So you got to have a good CRM to do this, and you got to, so that you can not only have your team put a notification on the lead, say follow up in a week, follow up in a month, whatever, and then have an alert come up when they need to follow that particular lead up. That's how you manage that. But also so that you can have a way to enforce it. You can run a report and you can find out how many follow-ups that has been done on each lead. Because you could create a drop down on there that says followed up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, whatever amount of times, and have your manager monitor this so that you know for a fact that they are doing the follow-ups. Follow-ups so important. Seasoned, high-earning salespeople know what follow-ups like. People that are new to sales think you follow up once or twice and then that's it. we had a trade school client where literally, we couldn't figure out why they weren't closing their leads. They had a new manager come in and a new person handling the leads. The person was getting the lead that we would give them. They would email them once, and if they didn't reply right away, they deleted the lead. So not even just didn't follow up, they literally deleted the email so that there's no trace of the lead again in the system. I can laugh about it because I've got all this experience, but for the average person, legitimately, they have no idea about how sales actually works and why follow-up is half of the sales you're going to get ultimately at the end of the day from a set amount of leads that you have. So anyway, follow-ups are very, very, very important before you can say your leads aren't converting. And then, for that matter, not be looking systematized. So at the same time of you needing to systematize your sales process, you also need to make it not look systematized. If somebody thinks the worst thing in the world is you go in to sell somebody and you got a PowerPoint presentation and you're going through and you're reading shit off, people don't want to buy from somebody like that because it looks like you're just trying to ram that freaking whatever you have straight down their freaking throat until they choke on it. So if you don't want people to have their guard up and then as a result not listen to you, what you're trying to communicate to them, you got to seem like you're the only person that they dealt with this week, ultimately. And you're listening to their individual needs. You're asking them questions and you're saying, oh, great, Tom, I'm glad that you said that you have an issue with your upstairs window and it has a leak. You know what? Actually, a lot of people do have that problem. And for that matter, the new line of windows we have, the Anderson windows, they're totally leak proof. You're never going to have a leak issue like that in the future if you get these new windows installed. Not now, not 10 years from now. And pitching it like that versus to say, Anderson windows don't leak, they have a 10-year warranty. That doesn't make nowhere near as much money as having a customized, what seems like a customized process. Now you're still going to script it like hell. The consumer just isn't going to know it. And so instead of like a word for word script, which technically that's what script means, but you're going to have placeholders. We're going to say, ask the question why they're going to buy. Then once you do that, then the response is should be always, oh, great, da, 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 or insert, whatever. So you're going to have it a template to go with, so to say, versus so much a word for word script. So that's a very good key thing here. I mean, ultimately at our advertising firm, we also don't do that. There's most firms selling to businesses various services, they're sending cookie cutter proposals to them. Nobody gives a shit about your cookie cutter proposal. They want a custom proposal where you talk about their specific needs, wants, and desires, and you send that to them. If you're the only one in your space doing it, which you likely are, they're going to buy from you because you look like you give a damn. But if you leave it to your salespeople to do it, they're going to send a cookie cutter proposal out because it takes too long to send a proposal out that's custom each time. So they're not going to do it. They're too lazy to do it. And as a result, they're going to throw away 2/3 of your freaking leads that you're paying dearly for. For that matter, it's something also important to consider if your leads are not converting or converting well enough. Now, for services specifically, the stuff that I just mentioned are make or break. In today's environment with the cost of traffic, cost of leads, if you're not having a multi-step sales process that's well choreographed and no almost borderline abusive follow-up, to make sure people aren't really interested and making things look totally customized to the user's experience and user's needs, you're not going to be able to say, my leads are converting well, because you haven't done the basics of what really makes yourself stand out as a company and have that edge so that when everybody else is paying $50 a lead as is you're making it profitable and they're just kind of breaking even. For that matter, if you want somebody to guide you through this process, not only the ads, but the sales process, what I've seen work for a company like yours, reach out to me at guaranteedppc.com. I'd be happy to have a conversation with you about it. I can also sell, if you are interested in it, like with the window company I talked about, and the case study I'm about ready to go through here in a moment, I can sell you the winning ad templates that work for that market, including landing page templates, campaign templates, and the rest of it, which will get you a known result for your company without having to do all the heavy lifting and work we had to do at our agency to find out how to get results in your market. So if you're interested in that, you can also reach out to me at my firm at guaranteedppc.com. We've worked in over 100 different niche markets, so the chances are quite high we've already got the results you're looking for. And beyond that, if you also are stuck with where you're at, you can also simply reach out and set up a coaching call with me, and I can go over everything you're doing and let you know where the bottleneck is in your business right now, whether it be the ad is the issue of why you're not getting leads, or it's an issue with your sales process itself or the pricing. Very good at spotting this because I work with many, many small business owners to identify where these bottlenecks are on an ongoing basis. So if you're interested in that, you can also reach out to me at guaranteedppc.com. Going into the case study now, final segment here. So we had a window installer where everything I basically just said to you on this video, I said to this particular company. And I don't let clients at our agency come to me and say, Corey, you need to do better. Our leads aren't converting. I don't let people get by with saying that and then just say, okay, we'll make our ads better. I'm always trying to make the ads as good as I can anyway. I'm not like half-assing it. But at the same time, I'm not just, bowing down to what people want to hear. I come back and I tell them, I look at their sales process and I tell them, you're not nowhere near working these leads well enough. And until you do, it's going to be a struggle scaling up your ads. That's just the way that it is. And some people get it. Some people's ego is too big. They don't want to do it, or they think they can't, whatever, doesn't matter. They're just not going to be able to make their ad campaigns that profitable and therefore scale them that much because they're not getting the full value out of their leads, and leads are expensive. So with that said, for this window installer, we had them improve their entire sales process so it was scripted. Even though I, being a PPC agency here, shouldn't be the one that had to bring this up to them, we did. I saw them optimize their phone handling process. So when somebody answered the phone, they were saying, hey, thank you for calling James's Windows. We are the leading seller of XYZ type of windows in the Johnsonville area, in business since XYZ year. How can I help you today? Okay, great. James, you're really going to like what we have to offer. We have a really good, knowledgeable sales guy that can come out to your location and look over what you have, show you a bunch of different examples. So, which is pretty much the process you want to go through for something like that, by the way. Most people are going to say, oh, you want to quote? Okay, what time do you want me to come out? Boring. And so you're going to get a lot more people to set an appointment that way, first of all. Then when they, arrived, they would, instead of trying to give them the cookie cutter approach, they ask them about what specifically the issues that you have. What do you like? You think that you would want in Windows? Do you want, low cost, energy savings? Do you want something kind of like in the middle? And then giving them a custom proposal of saying, with all the information you gave me, these 2 or 3 are likely your best solutions here. You can either go with the 2-pane, 3-pane. This brand's actually a little bit better. If you want it to last a bit longer, you could go with this and really customize it, which some other companies do already do this, but they really gave them a customized proposal and they put it in a document. So at the end of getting the quote, they got a document that listed everything that they said and that was important to them, and then the recommendations and why we recommended what we did to that user. Which this can be done in any kind of home services. I've seen this done, which I've seen other people do it. I didn't have the idea myself. I just recommended what this other guy was doing in the restoration services space for this particular company. With that, they also did the follow-up packages. So what I told them, the shock and awe package, sending mailers out in the mail, anybody who got a quote. And then they also started following up users more. Even though they were following up several times each lead that comes in, they were following up way more, to the point where basically they would follow up until a lead either said they weren't interested or it was 3 months in the future and there's no way in hell this person's obviously either alive or not interested in Windows anymore. These were leads, by the way, that came from Google search and Bing search. So with that said, how much do you think this internet sale, given that they weren't doing these things and they started doing them, how much did this affect our closing rate on our leads? How much? Well, they were getting pretty standard closing rate on leads, at least standard for what most people do that are half-assing their sales process completely are going to get on a Google search lead, which is about 11% on the closing rate. That, average for people that have average prices and average offers in terms of inventory and that kind of thing. When we switched to having the upgraded sales process itself that was standardized, the way that I said, not even fully split tested yet, we were at 23% closing rates on those window leads. More than doubling the closing rate just by tweaking the sales process and making it ideal versus random each time, and letting the salespeople run amok, do whatever the hell they want to do, let the secretary do whatever the hell she wants to do. Ultimately, whereas we were making profit on the leads before this, we're making $10,000 a month in profit, somewhere around that before we were doing this. Now we're making $25,000 a month in profit because we more than doubled the closing rate. And the extra sales actually came with no extra added marketing cost on top of it, which is where the beauty in this lies. There's no, when you scale your ads at a similar cost per lead, yeah, you'll get more profit. While there's more work in the sales process, it's certainly not more than the cost of having to buy another lead, given that we're paying $100 a lead or so, and we could get the proposal process templated out, and we could get somebody in a third world country to do the custom proposal for the client. We just have to input on an iPad and fill out on a form on an iPad certain things that are true about the client, click some check boxes. We could have somebody make a custom proposal, which that even in itself could be customized with some sort of script if you wanted to, which they didn't do, but you certainly could do. It doesn't cost that much once you really streamline the process. At the end of the day, salespeople are doing almost the same things as before. It's just optimized, and you of course still have to have people now monitoring the people doing the sales and making sure they're following through, like I mentioned you have to do before if you're going to do this. But practically speaking, it's going to be less than half the cost of just having to buy another lead to get that extra sale. So anyway, that's a perfect example of how much this can matter. We've got countless different people who run campaigns that are just getting absolutely clobbered by click fraud, and they're basically getting leads that don't convert because of that. And that's more common anymore for markets where you have high cost per click, anything above $5 to $10 a click. This is going to be your bigger issue. So, but for all that, what I said, it does vary based upon your situation, which one of these three are affecting you the most. These are the three things you have to go through though. If you want to, of course, want to know more about your specific situation because you are having trouble penning it down, let me know, reach out to me in my agency. And with that said, I'll wrap it up with that. Thank you very much for watching as usual, and I'll see you on the next one.
Remember when I said click fraud was important during this video? Well, this video here tells you how to do it.